Hello and welcome to Fellowship in Essential Oils. We're back for another week. I'm going to throw you under the bus, Liz. I thought we were talking about one oil this week, but you've just told me we're talking about another one. So this week, it's Liz's choice of dill. And I'm feeling like a dill for getting the wrong oil. How are you, Liz?
I feel so bad about this. So to let you in on a secret, guys, we're supposed to be talking about Kanuka apparently, but I've done no work. I've done a bit of work on Dill, but not very much. So yeah, I'm very good this week, haven't I? Sorry, Ad. So
That's okay.
consequently, neither
There
of us
was
wearing the right clothes. I could have worn a beautiful green top, but I can't be bothered today. So it's all good.
okay.
It's all good.
Well, let's talk about dill, shall we? An amazing essential oil. Um, I love the unique aroma of dill essential oil. It's not necessarily one I'm popping in a diffuser for, for mood enhancing and that type of thing. And I will talk a little bit about how I like it for the mental faculties. But where do you reach for dill?
Um, so I really like cooking with the herb for a start off. It's a very Greek herb. It turns up in spanakopita, tzatziki, lots of different Greek things. So I grow it a lot. But medicinally, I really use it for two main things. Although the research has thrown up lots more stuff that has provoked thought. Um, a digestive. Um, with little kids, for example, I don't know whether people realise that gripe water that we have in the UK is made of dill seeds. Very good digestive, but also emotionally and mentally for teenagers. Mum wrote this, and I was like, I really think that is correct. Teenage girls have got their heads in the clouds and they're not applying themselves to work, and their dreams are kind of somewhat unrealistic and sort of headstrong and not applying themselves. I do like dill for that. Um, but yeah, it's one of those oils as well that you smell it and you wouldn't think, oh yeah, that is a tremendous smelling oil, but it's really important in perfumery. It's used a lot in perfumery for sort of an aniseedy green note. So quite often I will put it into a blend just to go, well, that's an interesting dimension. I'm not really using it that much from a medicinal point of view, but to kind of put a bit of a magical spin on it, and like that you'd sniff it and you go, I actually don't know what I can smell in there. So yeah, it is. In terms of research, though, really important herb and essential oil, I should say, for diabetes and for cholesterol, lipidemia, all of that stuff that, like I said, we use it for digestive, but and that has been the way. We've got evidence it was used in ancient Egypt that way. So for 5,000 years at least, dill has been used as digestive. But now we are understanding the effects it has on the system. And it is one that's been really deeply researched for diabetes in particular, because there are so many. Well, there's an epidemic, isn't there, of type 2 diabetes, because there's lots of fat people in the world, really. It's obesity is a big thing. But also the fact that we are using foods that are not as plant-based or from the earth. They've been, what's what I'm trying to say, processed a lot by the time we eat them. And for example, just going off tangent there, because I think this is a really important point. Magnesium is like a deficient mineral pretty much pandemically across the world, because magnesium develops in fruit that matures on the trees. But because we now live in a world where we have like seasonality all year, just you can always have apples regardless of whether they're in season or not. And if they're not in season in your country, we'll get them from somewhere else and have to travel for quite a long way. Fruit is picked too early for magnesium to be able to form. So you can get it from like nuts and things like that, but only in small amounts. The biggest area of magnesium is just gone out of our society now. So and magnesium is a big driver. Deficiency is a big driver in metabolic syndrome. So we have this growth area of diabetes, and also this idea that there are so many different drugs and ways that you can treat diabetes, but actually there's a massive fallout of people who stay on the drugs. There's a lot of people who just can't tolerate them. So there's problems with nausea, digestive problems, but also sexual dysfunction, all sorts of different reasons why people don't. And I think I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but I think the retention's it's really low, something like 20% of people actually follow through with adhering to their diabetes medication because of these side effects. So there is quite a growth area of people who are looking at herbs as a way to go, right, okay, what can we do? What can we know about this? Because particularly with digestion, that's what herbs have always been used for. And about 80% of the people in the world actually use plants as medication. You know, we're going from three countries, you know, we're Australia, the UK, broadcasting predominantly to the States. We're all very dependent on synthetic man-made drugs, but that's a small population in a very big world that relies on plants. So this digestive element of dill has been well known for a long time, and now they're investigating, well, okay, so specifically what does it do? How can we perhaps leverage this? Because of course, it's a really easy plant to grow, although it has a short life. It's an annual, it goes to seed very quickly, but it does germinate very quickly. You can get the medicine from a dill plant really quickly. It's cheap, really cheap. You know, it's any kind of country could grow it. It doesn't have to be particularly hot. It grows really well here in the UK. For example, things like gravidlax come from Scandinavia, cold area with the dill. So this is like an important plant. And what they've been able to ascertain is that dill profoundly affects the way that we process fat, but B, the way that our body deals with cholesterol. So there's two kind of main types of cholesterol, isn't there? There's LDL and HDL. HDL is the good stuff that pushes the bad stuff out of the body. And really long story short, what happens when you spend a lot of time with dill, eating it or using the essential oil, then the LDL, the bad cholesterol, goes down, triglycerides go down, hyperlipidemia goes down, so all the fats in the system go down. We'll come back to that in a minute. HDL goes up. So though HDL is the cholesterol that actually pushes everything else out of the body, cleans it and makes it healthy. So dill not only brings the bad stuff down, but it pushes the good stuff up. This hyperlipidemia has so many different problems in diabetes, and I've thought about metabolic syndrome as a concept that we have, like diabetes, but coronary heart disease, strokes. All of these are related to this idea that the body, that first of all, the blood vessels become weakened, but also there's like fat that causes plaque on the arteries, and then obviously causes coronary heart disease. So to deal with hyperlipidemia, that's like just like a throwaway word, but think of the ramifications of that. We're protecting ourselves against heart disease, stress, diabetes, all of those things. You know, we kind of live in a society that goes, oh, they think the plant medicine is bad. We want to sell our pharmaceutical drugs. That's true. That's without doubt true. But also think from their point of view. Cheap plant, dead cheap plant, easily accessible, can churn that out easy, can replicate that so quickly. Of course they're going to want to know about that, but also we can use it ourselves. So it's not actually that complicated a plant in terms of chemicals. It's probably quite surprising when you think, well, actually I didn't expect any of that. So the predominant constituent in it is limonene. You wouldn't have thought that by smelling it, but it is. And the other one is carvone. Now, carvone's a really interesting constituent because if you look at spearmint and you look at caraway, they're almost identical, except for this like strange isomer difference in carvone that makes them smell different. So it's kind of this magical thing. Smell dill, and you go, smells minty, smells caraway-y. So you kind of can interface with it. Carvone's again, anti-hypertension, anti-epileptic, antibiotic, antimicrobial. So all of these things are just like, well, why would you not be eating dill every single day, to be honest with you? What I should point out is an aspect of the safety, two aspects really, that comes from Tisserand and Young, which I think are salient and correct. So carvone is what we call a restricted constituent in the IFRA regulations, because we don't want to have too much carvone. So when we're looking at blending, we look at lower levels of carvone, but the balance of the chemistry within dill balances itself out, so it's safe to use up to about 3% dilution. That's fine. But what we should be really careful of is the fact that carvone can interact with diabetic medications. However, the process, the metabolic process that carvone goes through, means that the only way that it would be problematic is if you drank it. So you shouldn't be taking the oil orally if you're on diabetic medications. If you're thinking of ingesting it, bad plan. But that same interaction isn't problematic if you apply it through the skin. It's metabolized differently. So this is one that we would definitely want to use the skin or to eat the herb. The herb is interesting because usually when you have a plant growing and you think, oh, I've got lots of that, I'm going to dry some, I'm going to put some away. It's rubbish, absolutely rubbish as a dried herb. It loses so many of its oils, it loses its freshness. So, like I say, if it's such an easy one to grow, if you're thinking of, oh, I definitely would like to have it in my herb garden, you should definitely try and do that. But you can just keep cutting it down and letting it grow. Cut it down and let it grow. Don't try and dry it. It will be problematic. So digestive, as I say, and everything that comes with that. So in terms of the fats, in terms of the cholesterol, and this hyperlipidemia also has ramifications in terms of retinopathy, in terms of vascular damage. So all of that is protected by dill. This tiny, tiny little herb does this amazing thing. So that, I would say, that is the predominant aspect of the physical medicine.
Amazing. Now, one thing that seems to be quite popular actually in the UK at the moment is doing aromatherapy wrap to help with weight loss. And you did mention that dill can help with weight loss, I believe. Could you use it in some kind of wrap, do you think?
Yeah, sure. I mean, they're hilarious. I have to say they are hilarious. Really, effectively, what you're doing is wrapping yourself in cling film. But yeah, definitely, of course. It wouldn't be. You'd want to combine it with other things. So blending wise, it would blend absolutely beautifully with grapefruit. Grapefruit's definitely a great one for weight loss. Likewise, it blends really well with like cypresses or even better, juniper. Fennel, of course, same kind of scent profile because you have that anethol. So any of those would be really good for lifting the diuretic aspect of it to be able to flush everything out. But yeah, hilarious to do it, but you definitely could. Yeah.
Give it a whirl. Now, you're someone who loves to take your oils in the bath. I'm someone who loves to whack them in a diffuser, and I've always got multiple diffusers going around my space all the time. Dill's probably one I rarely would put in the diffuser because when I diffuse it, I actually find that it kind of almost gets me hungrier.
Oh yeah, I would say that probably, yeah. I couldn't tell you medicinally why that would be true, like from a pharmacological point of view, but I think herbs do that, don't they?
Yeah,
You know, them
almost gets
the whole
delivery glands going. So for people trying to
yeah.
lose weight, it might be a bit of a challenge there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah, maybe. But also I do think what does it make you hungry for?
probably healthy food, probably green
That
fruits,
would be my
salads, that
feeling
type
of
of thing.
yeah, that would be my feeling about it because it's got a very green note, hasn't it? So you'd be like, oh, I kind of fancy some fruit, or I fancy a bit of, bit of soup, or
Yeah.
like tzatziki or something like that. It's not like if you burn, for example, vanilla's immediately going to go, yes, I do want some cake. You know what
Give
I
me
mean? It's a
fatty
different
foods,
thing,
fatty
isn't it?
treats,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Now I was intrigued. You popped in a little comment at the start when we are having a chat about being really good for teenage girls, especially when their heads are in the cloud. And I'm sure there's some parents that can relate to that, or we all have to deal with teenage girls at some point. Could you expand on that a little bit? Because I actually find that Dill, when it comes to the mental realm, is quite a useful oil. But I'd love to hear you expand on the teenage girl part first.
So I don't know whether I can expand. I can speak to it if you like. So actually, before I started writing my own books, I predominantly ghostwrote for other people, and I was given a project by a book factory that churned out loads and loads of ebooks, asking me to do beauty with famous historical women, and I was like, okay, not very easy to do. Anyway, I kind of went away and to just produce this thing, and it was so odd and not at all what they were expecting. But everybody just went, I just love this. And out of it came these like it was like a past life regression story where the healer would she was called the healer. She preceded the secret healer. The healer went through various doors through time, and as she went through a door, she would walk in onto a scene of a famous woman and an iconic moment, and there would be like an interaction with a plant. Can't remember many, but the one that I do remember really strongly was that I did Joan of Arc, and Joan of Arc was Dill. And when I meditated on Joan of Arc, the thing that I kind of picked up the most was almost like a mum and dad just going, "What? When is she going to stop? When is she going to stop? This can't end. This can't end well. This just cannot end well." And this obsessional faith that she had. And I asked her to show me what plant that she would use, and she went and made herself a meal and she picked dill. And I thought, how very strange. So I spent ages looking through all books going, why would she pick Bill? Why would she pick dill? And of course, the very last one that you look at is the one where you find the information. The last one I looked at was probably the one that should have been the first I looked at, which was my mum's book. And there it was, these girls, these teenage girls with their heads in the clouds. And I was like, how strange is that? Did I remember that? I don't know. But so she had this, she made this meal for herself with dill, and then she wore a dill wreath. And what I found was in Rome, people who had been very brave were given dill wreaths. And that was very strange because I didn't know any of that. But having said that, I couldn't find primary sources. All I could find was like, the odd line here or there. And much as I like to follow those odd lines, you can't follow them all. So that was kind of the first one. And so when I was reading her book, I became very fascinated as to, well, she only writes like, in fact, I should say the book I'm talking about is The Garden of Eden by my mum, Jill Bruce. And she writes like a bit about mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, or actually I think emotional and physical are together anyway, but she also does like what etheric body, what chakra, what planet. And she also does a Kabbalistic thing, which I have to say I don't know huge amounts about. And the information, I find the information really fascinating when I read it, but it doesn't stick. You know, it's not something that I can like. Medical astrology I can go slow like that, but the Jewish stuff I can't. But I do find it fascinating as a means of kind of understanding, okay, that's what's going on. And I thought it was really interesting because it spoke exactly to this idea of Joan of Arc. So she talks about the tree of life. And the tree of life in the Kabbalah has all these different, it's like an illustration with dots, with lines to them. These are the pathways. And basically, the tree of life is a way of seeing the different faces of God. And she talks about how the Dill operates on one of these pathways. And the pathways are between Yesod and Malkuth. So it's always interesting because normally when I think about like the tree of life, I would go from the bottom working up. So from Malkuth, which is our physical plane, our kingdom, we call it, everything to do with material, physical energy, and work upwards towards Bina at the top. So you would go Malkuth to Yesod, but she was clear, Yesod to Malkuth. So Yesod is your emotional plane, your feelings, your thoughts. And so this pathway between Yesod and Malkuth is number 32, and it's called the universe. So there's lots written even just about this pathway. So I was like, this is just bizarre, you know, you could just look at that and not have an entryway in at all. But this universe is about how we relate to habits in our system and how those habits trigger the way that we respond to things in the world, in our life generally. And so this universe is just like one pathway. And when we meditate upon it, we're aware that, okay, I can't change anything in the outside world. The only thing that I can change is about the way that I respond to it. And how, and this Yesod is also like the astral plane, which we all, whether we intentionally mean to or not, go to, because we kind of go in and out of it when we go in and out of dreams. So this kind of filter of information, divine information flowing from the top through the emotional body to the physical body. So being able to influence that is phenomenal. And then if you put that in that idea of, right, we've got these these young girls who are very, very driven by their hormones, let's be honest, and by the external stuff that's going out in the media, by their peers and stuff. As a woman who is well, actually, I should say, as a woman who is both a mother to a daughter, no longer teenage, but has been, but also, of course, have been a teenage daughter of a mother, I can speak to this, that you just lose your ability to think for a while when you're late teenage. You know, you can think about, right, this is where I want to go in the world, but you're so profoundly driven by your hormones, which, of course, we now know are what are driving your thoughts and your worries and your emotions. So Dilly's very good at being able to go, just a minute, Joan. Just a minute before you get on that horse and get in that fire. So we just take a moment. It's really good for kind of and of course, it's one of those scents that appears a lot in like those young fragrances as well, interestingly. So you get things like Angel and things like that. They've all got that kind of aniseedy, fruity, high citrusy note. But it's really hard to talk concrete, material, normal stuff to somebody who really, really likes that boy, and you just know, this is never going to end well, you know? So just having, I actually would put Dill in an evaporator for those kind of situations where you just think, let's just have a little bit of calm, a little bit of sensibility here. So yeah, that would be the thing. And also, I stopped because I was thinking maybe it had been Kanuka it had happened with, but no, it wasn't. It was Wattle. But I'd done some meditations with Debbie Atterby with a girl who was a proper wild child, and I picked it up through the meditation. She was like, "It's so weird that you meditated with Wattle and you've seen the patient I'm using it on." And while still isn't a wild child, she's one that is following cults. You know, that would be a very big kind of thing. There's a I can't remember what it's called. Dance for the Devil. It's on Netflix at the moment, where these people are just going to this cult and they're doing these incredible dances on Instagram, and you watch them, and then you realise, oh my god, they're doing this. This is part of a religious cult, which is really, really strange. But those kind of people that you wouldn't understand, you just wouldn't understand, Mom. No, you're quite right, love. Put it in the diffuser.
It's interesting that you're talking almost like you started with teenage girls, but then you're talking about, other people in cults as well, and that mindlessness. One of the key words that I find comes up when I'm working with Dill is ingenuity. And it's amazing these days, even if we think for like not just the teenage girls, but I'm going to open this to everyone, how often these days a question is posed, and rather than thinking about the answer, what do? Let's Google it. Let the computer tell me what the answer is in that way. And it's almost as though we've forgotten to think for ourselves. So I find this is an amazing oil with a real mercurial energy, a real kind of third eye chakra energy, which really helps us to start thinking for ourselves because there is so much in life that takes the thought away. When we turn on Netflix, it tells us what we should watch. If we open up Spotify and listen to music, it tells us what we should listen to. We open up social media, it tells us what news we need to know and who we need to be aware of and all those different type of things. We've lost that idea to come up with our own ideas, our own originality. And I find working with Dill can be really, really great for just waking that up. That when you are stuck with a problem, it's amazing how many people, when they're stuck with a problem, don't know how to figure it out. And even I think sometimes children these days, or teenagers, or people as they're leaving the nest, are so used to everything being done for them. When they're in a difficult situation, they start to short circuit. And I find that Dill could be really good for clearing the mind a little bit to go, hold on, could I find an answer to this? What is a solution? And using phrases like, if I knew what the answer is, what would it be? And almost getting the brain to think in a different way as well. In the way of using Dylan, the more you work with it, I think not only can it help with your own ingenuity and your own thoughts and kicking the mind back in to think for yourself rather than having other people and even the world or, a cult leader or whoever that may be thinking for us, it really helps to awaken our curiosity about the world. And it's interesting how, for some people, as they get older or as they get into their routine, their world gets smaller. They come down, they condense how many friends, they condense the amount of activities they do, and they forget that ability to learn. And Dill really, I feel, is amazing for awakening that curious mind again of like, oh, I wonder why the lemon tree is growing like that. Oh, I wonder why that's happening. Just like it almost brings back that why kind of mind as well. So I love it for, I was saying before that it kind of stimulates my appetite for food, but I think it also stimulates my appetite and others' appetite for thinking, for ideas, for curiosity, for exploring. And when we think about that light kind of feathery herb that it is and the aroma that it has as well, caraway's, got a similar energy. Spearmint is very good for helping us to be aware of things that we're not normally perceiving in our everyday life. I think dill, a big mind opener. So that's why I absolutely love it.
So what's interesting is this pathway that I was talking about between Yesod and Malkuth, called the universe, has its own planetary rulership. And its rulership is Saturn. And this idea of hard work and applying oneself and not necessarily relying on other people's work, but to do the research yourself, to do that exploration, to put in the hours, to not go to the party, to do one's homework. That is a Saturn rulership, but Saturn also rules limitations, boundaries. And of course, these boundaries are very helpful because they help us to remember: don't spend too much money. There will be time when you need that money. Don't give too much latitude to your daughter. There will be times where you have to tell her to pack it in. All of that stuff. But what's interesting is this pathway teaches that those limitations only exist on Malkuth. They don't exist in Yesod because Yesod is an emotional area, an astral area. So therefore we don't have those restrictions. So we've been able to walk that walk. So I should say that in the tree of life, of course, we have this Malkuth Yesod. It's a path, but in bee medicine we would say we go between like that. So we would go restriction, freedom, restriction, freedom, restriction, freedom, and learning that actually the two are completely interlocked, and you can walk your way through them. You can walk your way through any kind of situation when you know the mindset to do it. So yeah, this curiosity of being able to go, what if? And I absolutely love that question you asked. If I knew the answer, what would it be? I've never heard that before, and that is going to be my new favorite thing. But this idea that, well, there is a restriction, but on the other side of whatever is of the mirror, the reflection is there is no restriction. So how do I get there? How do I get there? And likewise, I mean, imagine what it must be like to be the mother of a daughter who is going to put herself inside of a fire, or is going to a religious cult. This logic's gone. There's just, I just don't know what I can do. So this idea of, well, there is no solution. There is a solution. We walk through it. We find that solution. So it's the same pathway, definitely the same pathway.
Really interesting. Interesting that you mentioned Seton as well. I will go off on a slight tangent because we like to do them sometimes here on Fellowship in Essential Oils. The day before this episode comes out, Saturn is going into retrograde. So remember, when a planet goes into retrograde, it takes its energy, what it helps with, out of our lives. And we're kind of left to fend for ourselves all the way until the 15th of November without Saturn's assistance. So Liz mentioned before that Saturn is very much about restriction. A key word that I really like to use when I'm talking and teaching about Saturn is discipline. And we often think, discipline, again, it's like, that's a hard-ass kind of energy about it. But, I also think I heard this. I had someone in a class once that I was teaching, and she said that she sees that self-discipline is a form of self-love. And what we mean by this is, why do we make our children go to bed early and eat their vegetables? Is it because we hate them and we're trying to be strict, or is it because we love them? And so Saturn retrograde is a really great time when normally our own self-discipline starts to waver and we see holes in our discipline. We're like, oh, I might just snack on that. And actually, I did catch myself. I was snacking on chocolate just before we recorded today. So those kind of things come up, and it's a time to kind of recommit to what you're actually focused on, because that discipline of Saturn is really, really important. We talk a lot about our inner child and nourishing our inner child. This is the time to actually awaken your inner parent or your inner father, and Saturn is the planet of the father, so that you are kind of being more disciplined with yourself, but not as a hard ass, but because you love yourself. That you put yourself to bed at the right time, that you eat what's right for you, that you focus on what's important for you because you love yourself, and it's a form of self-love. So be mindful of that. That little lessons around that might be coming up if you're listening to this when the episode first comes out, and it will kind of wave around for a few weeks and then ebb up in the middle of November 2024 as well. But Dill could be one of those ones that could, if you need a bit of insight, could be a good one to work with at the time. If you need a bit of discipline, I go for basil, by the way. Back off my tangent.
I do think that, like, Saturn retrograde is a really great indicator of where your purpose is in life. That you have that natural desire to do it, that flow. So when Saturn's gone and the headmaster's left the room, you're still reading that book. You're still trying to write that thing. You haven't got somebody down. It's just like, I still want to do this, even though nobody's cracking the whip. So I think it's really interesting time to kind of just go, when I don't have to do anything, what am I doing? Because there's no like boundaries and restrictions. I'm just doing it because I just want to do it, you know? And I think it's a really interesting insight into who you are to be able to have those times of just going, nobody's telling me I've got to do it. I never even realized how much I love doing this, you know?
Yep. Yeah. Retrogrades offer amazing lessons and epiphanies. They're often touted, I find, in very shallow blogs and social media and that kind of thing, that a retrograde is a time of chaos. Now, if that's the case, then we're constantly in a state of chaos because planets are retrograding all the time. And Mercury does it sometime, or 3 to 4 times a year, but all the other planets are doing major ones for 4, 5, 6, 7 months of the year. So your life would be chaos if you just looked at that. Look at it more as shifts in energy, support and no support, and what lessons are available and what can I learn at that time. And that's what I love about the retrogrades.
Interesting, you were talking about how you snacked on chocolate as if it was a bad thing. It's like my primary food group, but 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 also that how you were saying that basil makes you go, oh, I do think that it probably makes you hungry for good food. So that might be interesting application for it over the next few weeks. If you find yourself, Adam, going for the chocolate, or if I find myself going for lettuce, I need to commit myself to a sanatorium, I think. But yeah, you
Love
got
it.
green.
So we've been talking astrology, obviously. I actually would dedicate Dill to Mercury because of that ingenuity, that curiosity, that kind of energy. Where are you going to place it? Are you going to place it with Saturn or are you going to place it elsewhere, do you think?
I don't know. I've been back and forth and back and forth and back and forth about it. I Okay, let's work it through. And I'm not saying this is the answer. So Mercury, you're looking at the spiritual aspect, but if you look at it from a medicinal point of view, medicinal astrology and the chakras, we would say Mercury is throat chakra. Does it speak to the throat? To me, it doesn't. Not sore throats, anything like that. Not in terms of speech or anything like that. Organs, etc., nervous system, nerves, no. So I think, given that I would say that it's got so many historical connections with good fortune and victory, that it is a beneficent herb that is expansive and makes us look outside of things, and definitely connected to authority, but not in a bad way, and digestion. Jupiter.
Fair enough. I'd love to know what everyone thinks. Let us know in the comment section. Is it Mercury? Is it Saturn? Is it Jupiter? Or are you going to pick another planet? As we say, Liz and I will constantly be saying we're not right. When it comes to the spiritual and those more holistic aspects, our propositions, what we propose, what we believe, or what we've found in our lifetimes is there to kind of whet your appetite and get you thinking, to give you a starting point to dive into it. So yeah, let us know what you think.
I think that we could expand on that point to make it clear, because I see a lot of people in like priestess pages and witchcraft pages saying, well, I don't understand herbs, so is it just important what my intention is? And I think that's a yes and no answer. So for example, it wouldn't be a great plan to do a ritual to Demeter and stick a pomegranate on there, because that was what kept her daughter in the underworld. So there does need to be some vague understanding of what the herb is. But I think the important thing to understand is know what that herb does, find out what that herb does, and understand the story that it's made in your brain, understand the symbolic layers, because that symbolism really charges the intention that you're giving it. So if Adam says, well, I want to use it from a mercurial point of view, his understanding of Mercury and the things that he finds important about Mercury and the things that he wants to really imbue in terms of the characteristics of Mercury count. And they'll be different to mine. And so sometimes that will be why we pick different ones, because I'll be like, well, okay, I need to, these are the levels I work on. So therefore it needs to fit that jigsaw. but it doesn't. It's irrelevant if to Adam really what physical medicine, because that's not where his intention lies. So it doesn't matter that they're different as long as you understand how you made the process to choose that for that reason.
Yeah, I love that point. I love that. Now, chakras, I use it for the third eye chakra. I know third eye is not so much a mercurial thing, but I just find because of that, a lot of time when people think about the third eye chakra, they go intuition. And I was teaching a chakra course last night, and I'm like, what's the third eye chakra about? Intuition, vision, all that type of thing. I often talk about the third eye chakra being its intuition, but it's also the intellect. So we take the innovation or the inspiration that comes from the crown chakra, our spiritual center, and then we go, well, how do I apply that to the physical world before I speak about it and start planting those seeds of desire? So I find that Dill is more on that, not so much intuitive, like it's not one that's going to kind of help you with your psychic or your clairvoyant readings. It's more about inspiration and sparking new insight, possibly intuitively, possibly intellectually, but just getting the mind kicking in a bit more. So that's why I love it for the third eye chakra. But what would you say, Liz?
So I'd finish what you were saying there, that the third eye is also memory.
Mm.
So things that clock into memory. And just as an aside, actually, before we speak to that, was reading a really interesting paper that was working with dementia patients, and they've proven that olfactory cues are much stronger than visual clues for people with dementia. So that idea, of course, where we call it Proust phenomenon, when you smell or taste somewhere and you're like, oh, that's just reminding me of such and such. So I think that's got a really powerful leaning here, because as I said, it's very much a Greek food. You know, Dill will take somebody from Greece back home psychologically.
Mm.
But for me, if I choose Jupiter and I'm thinking about digestion and hyperlipidemia and all of that stuff, but also teenage girls and cults, weak identities, then I'm going to go solar plexus.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense for sure, definitely. Now, it's becoming a bit of a theme of our conversations as well. We always talk about astrology, we always talk about chakras, and we have been talking recently about, does everyone need Dill in their collection? What's your opinion on that?
Does everyone need Dill in their life? I think
Yeah.
is a better way of saying it. No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think that it depends. I mean, I haven't even touched on, and I won't touch on, because I think it's another body of work. But it's an oil that you could use for psychopomp work, of like helping people transition and fear over death and stuff like that. So if you're doing that kind of work, yeah, you need it. If you've got somebody who has diabetes, then I definitely think you should. If you've got a teenage daughter who's going off the rails, I think what is it? It's about £5 a bottle. It's definitely worth throwing some money at that. But you've got loads of other digestive oils. Buy an introductory set. You've got peppermint. It's doing the same thing in it. So
Yeah.
no, I don't think it is. But I don't think that there is like sometimes I kind of make arbitrary rules of like, you shouldn't be buying that for the sake of buying it, like I do with spikenard and palo santo, and my choice is entirely, there's none of those really. I just think that you've got other oils in your boxes that will do the job.
One thing that did stand out to me today that I actually didn't realize about Dill that you mentioned about for high cholesterol, lemongrass has always been my go-to, and I must admit that I eat very healthy, and I had high cholesterol at one point. Doctor was like, right, if you don't get that down, we want to get you on meds, and I was like, not a chance in blooming hell. And lemongrass, worked its wonders for me. Lowering stress also helped as well. Would for people with higher cholesterol still be something you'd pop on the menu? Yep.
Yeah, I didn't take the time to lay them side by side. Life is too short unless you are writing the book. But my instinct would be Melissa would be better.
Mm-hmm.
Having spent a great deal of time with Melissa, knowing that the ins and outs of every aspect of the cholesterol stuff. But why would you not put them together? It's definitely a fraction of the price of Melissa. One of the first things I was told, the rosemary also affects cholesterol, and you see that a lot in like margarines and stuff like that. But I have never sat and looked at the research. But and I didn't know that about lemongrass. So that's interesting. Interesting that it's lemongrass and lemon balm. So I wonder if it's citral, because it is citral in Melissa. I think that is hyperlipidemia. But yeah, definitely cholesterol is, and I would use it topically, not necessarily, of course, put it in the bath, lovely, very, very soothing and uplifting, but just rubbing it on, I would definitely be doing it. If I've got cholesterol, I'd be really trying hard to go with the phytochemicals.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're going way over time, I'm sure, today, but still, it's interesting. I was reading that the World Health Authority has changed its guidelines around your 5 a day. That presumably that's not just a UK thing, that you're supposed to eat 5 fruit or vegetables a day. And this has been really interesting for me because of feeding Daryl now. He can't eat food. We have to liquidize everything. So everything is a lot of is plant-based or dairy-based or nut-based. Now, this would be the point that under the 5 a day regime, nuts don't count. Neither do I think pulses do, but herbs and things don't. So what the World Health Authority have said is, now that we understand how much of an effect phytochemicals have on the microbiome, and the microbiome has such a profound effect on health generally, but in terms of particularly immunity, we're changing how we do it. So we're not going to make a recommendation that you eat, it should be 80 grams of a vegetable, of 5 of those a day. We're going to say you should have 30 in a week. And actually 80 grams is quite a lot if you've got a kid like Dexter who will not eat a pea. He will only do 3 peas. 4 peas is too much. So 80 grams is a long way off, but they on this 30 grams a day, 30 items a week, it doesn't matter how much you eat of it. It's the diversity that's the important thing. And so, and because they want colour diversity, so not just eat your greens, but eat your reds, your yellows. So, for example, you get like a point per one for each one you have. So if you eat carrots, you get 1. You eat onions, get 1. Nothing for onion rings, apparently, which is disappointing, but still. But if you have like peppers, you get 1 point for a red pepper, 1 point for a yellow pepper. But importantly, now nuts are involved, but also herbs and spices, because the body really works hard to be able to use them. So where you get like a point for peppers, whatever, for carrots, you only get half a point for herbs or spices, but they do rack up. So if you're really trying hard to put your dill in, you think, right, okay, well, I can put it with some cucumber for tzatziki, and I can really use my fish oils and have Gravidlax. And you're really thinking about your herbs really counts now. Eating those fresh herbs, and actually using butters and oils. But like I said, I don't recommend, particularly with this one, taking it into orally. And between you and I, it tastes horrific because I tried it just to ask the question. So yeah, I think maybe not an oil that you need to have, but you should be thinking about eating it, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I like the way you were putting it, but as we teach our nephews here in Australia, you've got to eat the rainbow. And I actually set the challenge each day. Have you eaten something red, something orange, something yellow, something green, and something blue or purple? And
I've never heard that. I love that.
Cheese and tomato sauce do not count as your red and your yellows. They might actually be a fruit, vegetable, or similar type of thing. So eat the rainbow every day. A lot more fun.
Yes, I love that. But yeah, so this idea of actually counting your herbs now is really important, I think.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Well, I think we've covered a bit about dill essential oil today and a few other little extraneous things as well. But when you start working with dill, it opens the mind, it awakens curiosity, and you want to talk about everything. And we've just demonstrated that in this very long episode, but we hope that you've actually learned something. So don't be a dill, eat the rainbow, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hello, Adam here again with a little bit of a PS. I just realised that Liz was actually right. We were meant to be doing Dill this week. Kanuka got shifted to another week, and we will be exploring that oil soon. But there are a few other things that I forgot to mention because I was caught unawares. Now, Dill has historically been used a lot in love elixirs and charms. So if you're wanting to bring some love into your life, putting it in a little charm bag, maybe in some rollerball or some diffuser mixes would be really great. But especially popping a couple of drops of dill in the bath makes you irresistible to men. Now, I know that Liz loves to take her baths. Maybe she needs to get some dill in there from time to time. The other thing is, dill is renowned for helping to get rid of bouts of bad luck. So if you're just having a bad run, then that might be a time to bring dill into your life. Remember, as long as you get it into your life in some way, energy is going to dance with yours and it will help in that magical realm. So those are just a few other tips for using dill on a holistic level. We'll see you next week. Blessed be.